Hey everybody, welcome to Unscripted. We're all about inspiring better conversations and helping people think more deeply and critically about faith, life, and leadership. My name is Sam, and I'm here with Pastor Mike. How are you today, sir?
Hey, Sam. I'm good today.
Awesome. You're doing pretty well?
I'm doing pretty well. Christmas is approaching. Excited about it. Wow, if you're listening and you got other things going on Christmas Eve, you get the music is going to be so good. The service at the high school is going to be so good. I'm super excited just to attend.
Yeah, we're just on the other side of Dickens of Christmas in downtown Ripon, and they were playing a few of the songs that they're going to play there. And I walked down there this last weekend and watched as it was unfolding. Like, they start playing this music and like Trans-Siberian Orchestra type stuff for one of the songs, and all of a sudden like this huge crowd is just gathered, and like they'd play a few songs, then they'd move on, and then a whole nother huge crowd would gather to listen to these songs. It was awesome. It was so much fun to watch.
Yeah, it's just a shout out to everyone who volunteers in the worship ministry. I mean, there's so many, it'd be impossible to list them all, but just as a group, so dedicated, so faithful. This past Sunday, I literally closed my eyes in the back of the worship center during the music before I went up to speak, and just went somewhere else. Like, I forgot about being in Ripon, I forgot about being at church or having to do a sermon, and I just focused on the beauty of the music, and I sang along, and it was just really special. You know, it was 5 minutes of just peace. I was teaching about peace. And,
totally.
And it was their voices and the sound mixing and the instrumentation, all of it was so good. It was a chance for the escape that I needed, like a kind of a busy, hectic week.
Yeah.
And now I just had this time with God through the music. So thank you to everyone. Thank you. They're amazing.
Yeah, it's been really fun. And I'm really excited about Christmas Eve. It's coming up fast.
Yeah, it's going to be really good.
It's going to be awesome. Okay, so this is our last one more thing.
Nice. Should be one last thing then.
I know, one last thing.
One last thing.
And
maybe that's next season.
Yeah.
Last year was one more thing. This year's one last thing.
Yeah.
And then the next year can be the thing to come.
A thing to come, yeah. It'll be all kinds of things. That's great. Okay, so with this, instead of you asking the questions this time, I want to ask you a few questions, if you're all right with that.
Okay.
All right. I'm curious. I mean, you've been here for 20 years, basically. I mean, the 20-year anniversary is next September, and you were here well before the first service. So you've been here for 20 years.
Yep.
And you've seen a lot of different things. I'm sure you've had a lot of ups, amazing moments, your fair share of downs, not so hot moments, a few mistakes, plenty of mistakes.
Plenty, yeah.
And then plenty of like huge successes and awesome things. Yeah. And we know like in January there's this transition that's happening, and so I thought it would be a really healthy time for us and a really good time to ask some of those kinds of questions. So the questions that I have are really about your mistakes, and also moments that maybe had a little bit of pride. Like, I'm just really proud of the way that our church followed God in these moments, or whatever it is. But I want to start with the mistakes. Because, I mean, if you're listening, like, that's what you really want to hear, I'm guessing. But so let's get to it right away.
Yeah. Great.
You've had 20 years. Yeah, I'm so
Tell
excited.
me the dumbest stuff you've done for 20 years.
Well, this is perfect, right? This is my chance to learn. This is a little bit selfish for me. So hopefully I don't make these mistakes again. See, this is really the reason behind this. But I think it's good. So I want to ask you, let's start with 3. But number 1, like 3 of your the most difficult mistakes that you had to walk through.
Okay, fair enough. First of all, in a leadership role, right, you're just going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
You should always have the right intentions, but sometimes even with the right intentions, you make mistakes. And it's funny you mentioned Dickens already, and you mentioned me being here so long. The first official meeting ever for RCC was Dickens weekend. The first meeting was at Dickens.
Wild.
We walked around and Dos Gringos was a restaurant here back then. We went there, and then we came to the church building that was a dump, and we sat on upside down 5-gallon pails, and there were a dozen of us.
Was it like freezing?
It was freezing.
Okay.
It was hard and raining.
Oh, it's always raining.
That was my first leadership decision. We were going to do dinner.
Yeah.
And then we were going to take a walk through Dickens. And then we're going to come here to church, and I was going to tell this dozen people like my vision for the church, and we're going to worship a little bit together. Someone brought a guitar and sit on buckets in what is now the great room. It was cement and everything back then. It wasn't a nice room. That was the plan. Well, we went to dinner, and that went just fine. They were nice people. None of them really knew each other, so you're getting to know each other. It was fun. And then we came out, and it was raining, but not super bad, like light rain, 33 degrees and light rain, something like that. And we're supposed
it's my favorite weather.
Yeah, right? And we're supposed to walk around Dickens now, and one of the people there came up to me, this dude, and said, listen, we can't do that now. We're all going to get wet. We're all going to get sick. We can't do it. We got to change the plan. And then a woman that was there overheard him say that to me. And then she came up and said, oh, no, you can't change the plan. We have a plan. You got to stick to the plan. You don't change plans. If you're going to have a good church, you can't be changing plans all the time.
Did you really say if you're going to have a good church?
Yeah, something like that. I mean,
so
she might have used nicer words. Okay. But you just can't be that way. You can't just change constantly. You got to. There was my first leadership decision, right? And I got 12 people and they don't agree with each other. And I made a decision then. Like the decision was I thought about, they both had good points. Like, usually people do. Intelligent people, good people suggest stuff. They might not agree with your opinion, but they're still really good, smart people, right? So they both had good opinions. I'm trying to weigh it out. And in the end, I decided here, we're just going to flip it. We're going to do everything we said we're going to do. But instead of walking and then go to the church, we'll go to the church first and have our meeting. And hopefully by the end of the time, the rain stops. And then we can walk around to Dickens.
That's a really smart idea.
And that's, I probably lucked into it. I was, oh no, this critical first decision. I could have lost everyone, all 12, the first day. But
the church that almost started.
Yeah, the church that died at Dickens. Lifetime movie. So, from day one, that literally the first thing we ever did, there was crisis in the first day.
Oh, man.
That's just the way it is, though. And some things you get right and some things you get wrong. So I've gotten a lot of things wrong over the years, but I can claim that I think I always had the right intentions.
I think that's important. I mean, you said that you always, as you're leading, should have the right intentions. Yeah. But I think that is something that we always talk about. It's okay to make mistakes, but the healthy thing with the mistakes is to have intentions, actually have intentions in the first place. Because sometimes you just stumble into it, you're not really thinking, but to make a mistake when you really thought it through and you did your best, that's a whole different story than you just did a dumb decision. Right.
If you look at the Bible, it says that's what God's looking at, right?
Yeah.
Not really for your performance, not your skill set. God is looking at your thoughts and your intentions, or essentially your heart.
Yeah.
And if your heart is pure, if you're trying to do the right things, even sometimes as you do them wrong, you're still good with God. And for anybody, whether you work at a church or you work anywhere, that's the starting place, right? You got to be good with God. So as I talk about the mistakes and stuff, I regret some things, but I was trying. I'll say I was trying my best.
So maybe not mistakes, maybe regrets?
Both, I guess. Yeah,
okay, sure.
Yeah, it's okay to have mistakes. I'm not hiding from mistakes, but whether or not they were mistakes, they've turned into regrets for me.
That makes sense.
I'll say it that way.
Sure.
The first would be, COVID came. And oh no, you got to close church, right? And we were like the first place to close way back when COVID was first announced.
Yeah, we beat school and everything else.
Yeah, we analyzed it and said this is the way the world's going. We're going to close, which I think was appropriate. And then we went into summer and we figured out, hey, we could have services out at Green Lake. We'll have them by the lake and it's outside and people are safer. And we had people wear red and yellow and green to determine how close you wanted to get to them. And I think we did a really good job through the summer. And then fall approached, and we were going to have our grand reopening in October, which would be about a year ago right now.
Yeah.
14 months. And the staff was so excited. The leadership was so excited. And then COVID kind of spiked again. And we're trying to assess the news and all that stuff. COVID spiked, and I made the call to not grand reopen. I wish I would have grand reopened.
Wow.
I really do. I tried to make the best decision I could with the information at hand, and I think that really messed up our people. I think they went through a long time, 6 months-ish of no church in person. And I think they were really hurting spiritually, our church family. And I neglected to realize just how important it was to be together and worshiping God together. I love what we've done online. We have hundreds of people that watch online. It's amazing. I'm happy that we're online, but we are missing out on a spiritual health thing. And even in the moment, I'm still not that regretful of the decision I made in October. Given the information that we had, we chose to stay as safe as possible, and I shared that. And people were very kind. I mean, lots of people left. They were frustrated with me and left. And they thought there's political reasons, all this stuff, which there weren't.
No.
I've never been one to hide anything. But it was my best call for health and safety. And a friend here from church, he called me, like I'll say end of November, sometime in November, and said, Mike, I really disagree with what you did in October. I think we should have opened. However, I understand, but you're messing up right now. I said, okay, how? And he was great. This is what friends should do. I love challenges. And he really helped me. I recently, we emailed back and forth or texted back and forth about this. I thanked him again. He had the best advice of the year. He said, we need to get back together because there's physical health, but there's spiritual health too. And we really need to get back together. And I was like, hey, I don't know when. COVID's still crazy. This is a year ago, right? So COVID, who knows? There's still all these questions. I don't know when. He's like, you just need to pick a date and get it out there, because at least people then have hope and they have a target. And I listened, right? I thanked him and hung up, and I thought about it a lot, and he was right. And we ended up announcing January, and then we finally, reopened last January, almost a year ago. I wish I would have done it in October. I'm happy we finally did it in January. I don't know. I might have continued the mistake, honestly. I think his phone call and his intelligent challenge, he had facts and all of it. It wasn't just his opinion. Yeah. Was really good. And it saved me from maybe another mistake. But I really wish I would have reopened last October. I think it would have been good for the health of our church, because since reopening, everything's been positive slant up, or positive momentum, right? Yeah. More and more people keep coming. More and more people are getting involved in ministries and all the good things. Look at worship, look at children's ministry, all the good things. And, it would have started 4 months earlier had I done that. So I regret it. That would be number one. That's top of mind.
So it's so interesting, because in that moment there was a lot of discussion happening, and I've since had like my own wrestling with that topic, because it's such a difficult one when you're trying to balance physical health with emotional, spiritual health. Yeah. And it's just an interesting one, because there's so many different scenarios. And I think, honestly, one of the results of this period of time has been a spotlight placed on emotional and spiritual well-being, and how important those things are, because there's only so much you can do through a screen. And there's something really important about being with each other that we've learned, honestly, even more so over the last year and a half, 2 years. Yeah. I think that was a really hard. I remember talking back and forth through all those things with you so many times. I mean,
the whole staff and leadership, and it was hard stuff to decide. And you look at what other groups are doing and try to figure it out, because there's a lot smarter people than me. And it was just tough. It was a tough stretch. I'm not mad at myself about it, but I wish I'd done it a little differently. Yeah.
All right, that's a good number one.
Okay, and I'm not. Maybe these aren't in any special order.
Yeah. Okay, good call. Good call.
But I would say another one is this, and it's also sort of COVID related. About a year ago, we had some staff resignations. Yeah. It's basically never happened here in 20 years. Like, people stay on staff forever. You've been on staff forever. Everyone's on staff forever. Until they move away or something. So to have resignations and have those clouded with personal things in those people's lives. There's not a lot of books about it, and it happened instantly, and so decisions had to be made instantly in front of thousands of people who see the decisions. And here's what I missed. And it's so simple, I can't believe I missed it. When that happened, I tried to send out emails to share, and it's really hard. People criticize I shared too much. People criticize I shared not enough. It's hard to know what to exactly share publicly about people's private lives or their personal decisions, right? Like, people should be able to answer for themselves. I wish after those events happened, I would have just had meetings like, hey, Sunday at noon after church, come to the worship center and ask any question you want. There's nothing off limits. Ask it, and there's going to be a bunch of people there, so no one can hide in the shadows. There can't be the rumor, gossipy stuff going on, because here we all are together. And if anyone is trying to make some junk up, everyone's going to know. And that would have been so great. And because I think people just had questions and concerns, and they didn't know where to go with them. Nice people are afraid. They don't want to call or send an email because they don't want to be the crabby person. I hear it all the time. Like, a wonderful person I've known for years and years and years and years has some question or whatever, and they're hesitant to ask because they think it looks like crabby. It doesn't. I love those questions, right? Yeah. But really good people sometimes are hesitant. So I wish I just would have gave them multiple opportunities on Sunday afternoons after services just to ask questions and get everything cleared up in the open. That would have been so much better. Because I just recently, someone met with me recently and had some questions about that, and it went amazingly well. They literally, that was like 2 weeks ago, they literally hugged me yesterday to thank me for the meeting. That's what could have happened for our entire church family had I done it right. Huh. So I really, really wish I would have had those just open meetings. It's RCC. Ask anything you want to ask. I'll give you the answer, and then you can decide what you think of the answer. Yeah. With nothing left unsaid.
It's interesting because I've heard you say, and I've heard you demonstrate and lead that way for 20 years or 12 years that I've been here. I think I've heard you say, ask anything about 10,000 times. Ask anything, ask anything, ask anything. Show up. My office door is always open. You say that all the time. So I think, and when you were thinking about this stuff, and like, I think you said that over and over again. You ask for people to send emails, all that kind of stuff. And you probably got a few. There's some people that were willing to ask, but I think it's so interesting that you can say it 1,000 times, and sometimes you can't just say it. You literally just have to show up and force the issue with people. And that's a new thing.
Yeah, it just made it super, super easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's kind of strength in numbers.
Totally.
So people would have been emboldened to ask a really tough question because they have 100 other people in the room and they feel safer versus one-on-one over a desk.
It's really true.
It would have made it, and I don't need that. I love the questions, right? Like people still don't believe I love it because I like learning from people, and I think I know a lot about church. I went to church for many, many years, and I've led a church for 20 years. I think I know a lot about church. There is no one in this church I couldn't learn something from about church.
Yeah.
Right? Pick any person that was here on Sunday and sit down over coffee and just start talking.
Yeah.
And just life and church and all those things comes up. I would learn something, and that's what excites me about the conversation. I love learning things, and sometimes you can really only learn through another person. You can't go out and read every book there is, right?
No, you can't.
They'll say something. It's like, oh, I never saw it that way. That's amazing.
And sometimes it's the new people too, right?
It can be anybody, yeah. If there was a 10-year-old here on Sunday, I could sit down with him right now and have a sandwich and talk about church, and I'd get something out of it that would help me grow. Yeah. I love it. So I continue to encourage people to have those conversations.
Yeah. So to the mistake you said you made, I mean, I think it's really hard to admit, especially with something that felt as sensitive as that. Yeah. And I really admire what you think you would have done differently, because I think that is a really a good thing to do, and it's hard to wrestle with it. And there is this interesting point about time, like some moments, some decisions have to be made so quickly, and you have to be on top of it, and you just got to do your best with the right intention, like we talked about. And you just never really know exactly if it's going to be perfect. But looking back, you can always probably tweak it. But that is one thing I think we've done really well over the years. We've made decisions. We've always revisited them and thought, okay, what could we have done a little bit better? Yeah. So
that's a big one. Like I said, I really, really wish I'd done it differently. But I can't turn it back now.
No. All right. Number three.
This, I guess for me, this is the one. I don't know, that weighs the heaviest on me of those, things I wish I would have done differently. Over 20 years, I wish I would have taught about what it means to be deep as a Christian differently.
Tell me more about what that means to you.
Over the years, I would say the two criticisms that maybe I've heard the most would be, number one, why don't we have communion every week? That's a lot of people would like to have communion every week, and tons of people ask that of me. Why don't we have communion every week? So that's been one, and they're not like angry about it or whatever, but they just wish there was more communion. And the other would be, sometimes people say, oh, it's not deep. Your sermons aren't deep, and sometimes if they're like been around church for a while, they won't use the word deep. They'll pull out a Bible verse that talks about milk and meat. Yeah. Like there's milk teaching and there's meat teaching. And I need more meat teaching. And usually what I want to say to them is just grab them and say, you've eaten too much already. You're spiritually fat. You eat a ton and you don't exercise your faith. And what I wish I would have done a better job teaching, and I'll even step back a bit. I'm being critical of my own teaching here, but I think it's real. I mean, no one teaches perfectly, right? No. At a church where I was a leader many years ago, the pastor there was an amazing teacher, way better than me. But the church struggled to give, and we're sitting as a group of elders in that church trying to figure out like the finances and all this stuff. And we were friends, close friends. And I just said to him, well, you've been here 15 years. You just don't teach about it very good. You're an amazing teacher, but the results are the results. 15 years later, people don't give. Like, you need to teach about it better, right? Yeah. And we were friends, and it was what friends say to each other. And now as I look at myself after 20 years, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing this pushback sometimes about it not being deep. And what I missed out, I should have been doing more from day one. It should have been on our website, should have been everywhere, is deep is transformation, not information. Yeah. It's transforming your life to be more like Jesus. That's what it means to be deep or mature as a Christian person. You're transforming. And none of us are perfect. We're all on the road. Some days you transform and become better. Some days you take a step back, whatever. But it's that desire to become more like Jesus and doing something about it. It's not learning more. It's not information. And I think that's the lie of the devil in the church these days. There are churches out there where they think like, oh, we're so deep. We're studying this one word for 3 weeks and we know all the Greek definitions of it. And that's not deep. Look at just in my proof. Look at how Jesus taught. Look at exactly how he taught. Emulate that. What does he say is important? Does he go back into Isaiah and talk about one word from Isaiah because he had the Old Testament scriptures?
Yeah.
Where do you see him do that? He doesn't. But I didn't do a good job, and now it sounds more like I'm pushing back. Like you said, I'm not deep, so I am deep, and it sounds like I'm almost arguing. I'm not. I'm just saying, and Jesus started it this way, and it's continued for 2,000 years. Deep is transformation. And if we're inspiring people to live differently, then we're deep. If we're just giving information, then we're not deep.
So here's my question on that. What have been the negative implications that you've noticed from that mistake? So how does that play out in people's lives? So that's caused you to realize, I wish I'd done that differently.
Well, yeah, a whole bunch of ways. There are people that I think are super deep, but they don't think they're deep.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
They're not a Bible scholar or whatever, or they forget to pray at dinner sometimes, whatever it may be. But man, they are just amazing people. They love Jesus, and when I look at their life, I'm like, yeah, they're a lot like Jesus. I wish I'd have done a better job pushing those people forward, because that's the model, right? Jesus is our model. And then as we follow Jesus, people can follow us.
Yes.
Right. That's Christian leadership.
I 100% agree.
You follow Jesus, and then people can follow you. And that happens at a church, it happens in our homes, it happens everywhere. You might have 100 people following you or 1 million or 2. But as you follow Jesus, people follow you. And I think there are people that can be great leaders of transformation towards Jesus-like living, but they're not convinced yet, right? They think they need to go to seminary or something.
Yeah, they need more book smarts, right? Is the thought.
And then there's people that have book smarts that think they're a leader, but they're really not.
Yeah. Because
they go to work and nobody likes them there. They're super crabby all the time. And then, oh, they're a Christian? I don't want to go there. So it's not about, information's good. Information helps you transform. That's the point of it. Like when you study scripture, it's not for intellect, right? You're not trying to pass a test. It's a manual for how to live differently.
Yeah.
And the living differently is the proof that you actually understood it in the first place.
Yeah.
Not the quoting the verse. That's not the proof. It's the different living.
There's sometimes an inverse relationship between how much you know and how wise you live. Sometimes there's this weird thing like, oh, I know all this information, but then actual practical stuff doesn't happen. And it's not always the case. Some people are really book smart and also super wise, and that's awesome. But every once in a while, you can fool yourself into thinking, because I know all these things, I must be something. Yeah. And then you don't actually live differently. I think that's so...
So that's on me. I mean, I've been the leader for 20 years. I think our church will get stronger in that way, and we'll continue to grow and be transformed, which is deep.
Yeah.
I think that'll all happen, but I wish I would have done a better job of it for 20 straight years.
Well, I don't think you've done an awful job of it. I think you've done a great job of it, but I think because it's been part of your teaching for a long time. I mean, you've talked about this stuff at least as long as
I'm just not talking about it right, I think. I don't know. It's okay. I'm okay with not being great at everything.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have been better at that.
Man, this is so interesting, because we don't get to talk about mistakes like this and be this raw all the time. So this is fun to really push back.
How long is it?
We can go further.
This is going to have to be a two-parter.
I want to go to the next one though. Like what about your moments of being like, man, that was an awesome moment. I've got a little bit of pride, even like in a healthy way. Like, what are those moments throughout these last 20 years where you're like, that was just amazing?
Pretty much every Sunday.
No, that's great. That should be awesome.
Yeah. It's just like,
how about sorry, random, I'm meaning to interrupt you, but we've had snowstorms in the past where 3 people have come. Those ones too?
Sure. Yeah, you bet.
Okay, cool.
However many people are here or whatever, we're just trying to do our best to honor God. And at the conclusion of every Sunday, I see people connecting in loving ways with each other.
Yeah.
I see whoever is teaching trying to give a biblical message to the best of their ability. I see really authentic worship. I don't know. I just, when I leave on Sundays, I'm usually jacked up pretty high just about what I just was able to experience with friends. So I usually, every Sunday, of course, Christmas or Easter are huge ones. Our big 10th anniversary service is one of my favorite memories in life. But our services, I usually am super happy afterwards.
Man, that's awesome.
But that is, maybe you're looking for something.
Yeah, I want some specifics.
Yeah, I get it. I would say, first of all, the changed lives. We came to Ripon and really didn't know anybody or whatever, and started from nothing, had nothing, no money, no people, no stuff, nothing, no building, and now there's been hundreds and even thousands of lives changed. And I get to hear those stories all the time. I heard the story of a teenage girl here at church this past week that is so benefited because of her connection here at church. I hear the stories all the time. You had 700 and some baptisms, and that's 10% of the city.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist. Like, I can't call another pastor somewhere, even at these beautiful, wonderful, great churches in big cities, and say, hey, have you baptized 10% of your city? Because it doesn't ever happen. So what God has done here is just amazing with changed lives. Whether baptism is an indicator of a changed life, or a prayer to follow Jesus is, or living differently, being kind to people at work, whatever that you have struggled to be kind to, but you are being kind to them because you're trying to be like Jesus, transformed. Yeah. The changed lives by far are the thing I'm most excited about. There's been a eternal impact because of the church in literally thousands of people's lives, and even beyond, Ripon. Like, can I continue?
Yeah, please.
This first one kind of flows into another one. Like, that's just the church, but the thing is, a lot of people don't even know about all the other stuff. It's really hard. It's like difficult things. How do you share about them? Do you send an email? Do you have an all-church meeting? With the difficult stuff. It's the same with the good stuff. Because if you talk about it too much, it seems like you're bragging. So that you really can't get up and say, "Oh, look at what happened. Look at this great thing." But there's been a lot of great things that we never even really talk about. Like, when I first moved here, I said we need a food pantry in this town, and 4 years later there was one. We established one, and quickly found, once the whole plan was in place and all that, found Amy Polesh to hire her to run it, and she has just done an amazing job for 15 years. But we live in a town where no one goes hungry.
And that's
insane.
Of, yeah.
Who lives in a place like that? But it's because of this church originally, and so there's the thrift store, there's the food pantry, there's Muggs Coffee House. Many people don't know that for years we tried to find the right place for Muggs Coffee House, and then this church bought a flower shop and turned it into a coffee house.
Yeah.
And because there wasn't a great place to meet in town, just to have in-depth conversations.
Yeah.
And even now at Muggs, you can go there and you can sit down with somebody and you can have a real conversation about life.
Yeah.
Which improves lives, right? We believe people connecting improves their lives. So we provided something to improve lives in Ripon of people who don't even come to RCC. There's the church plants we've done, trained people up and sent them out to start churches. And those churches have started other churches. And, the missions around the world, and all the churches starting in India and Mission Lazarus. I mean, so much impact of this church beyond just the church walls. That excites me.
Yeah.
But I never know how to talk about it because it just sounds like you're bragging. So I brag now for 2 minutes, and I won't talk of it again, but it's been amazing.
I love what you say, like it's internal impact. But what I think is really fun about that is I look around town. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I've heard this over the years multiple times, where there'll be like a young couple that they're in Ripon, they kind of got jobs, they're doing okay, but then they decide to stay long term. And the reason they stay is not because of their job, not because they have family in town, because they don't have family in town, and it's not because of the town necessarily, it's because of the church. Yeah. And what's incredible about that is that community and those the transformation that's taking place in their lives because of the church and because of what God's doing through it brings these people who have immense talents and immense gifts and passion for community, and all of a sudden there's a community in this town that I think has really benefited, maybe without even realizing it, and that's okay. But we have a thriving town, and it's amazing. And I think a part of that and part of the seeds is really just this church. There's hundreds of people who stayed here and are excited about being connected to other people here and have done things in this town and around these cities because they're gifted people, but they're here in part because of the church. It's just wild.
Yeah, the impact is immeasurable.
Yeah.
It's like throwing a giant boulder in a tiny little pond, and the ripples just keep going out. And it's funny, a few people have recognized it, and they've tried to leverage it.
Really?
Like throughout our time, different people have approached here to try to get this church kind of connected to the church, because they understand the church is like the biggest organization in the city. And there's a particular business leader / politician that really pushed hard to be able to share things at this church and from stage and all this stuff to kind of get the church behind what they were doing. And of course, like the only reason we ever use our stage is to talk about Jesus or talk about scripture. So that was an easy no for me. They were a very nice person. Yeah. And I respected how intelligent they were to try to team with this church. Yeah. I saw the angle, and I respected they were smart to do it. But they saw, even coming into this town fresh, like, okay, this is the organization that kind of is the tipping point of the town almost.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about that because it's not important to talk about on a Sunday morning.
No.
Jesus is important to talk about on Sunday morning. But it is what's happened behind the scenes for 20 years.
And what I love about that isn't that it's influential in the sense that like we've moved things one way or the other. I love the fact that transformed people have made a difference in a community.
You know how many teachers come to RCC?
Exactly. Like
School
their classrooms are healthy.
Come to RCC.
And
business
kids
owners,
grow.
It's everywhere. Basketball coaches that coach youth basketball. I mean, so many different groups come here and then impact wherever they go. They spread out and impact, and hopefully with their transformed life. Right?
Exactly.
Like theirs deep.
Exactly.
You came here, you were encouraged because it's been a tough week. You got to worship God on Sunday. You feel a bit better about yourself, a little bit better about your life. And now you go to coach first grade basketball on Monday, and you're just better to the kids.
Yeah.
Thank you, God, and thank you, RCC, for that.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's cool. It's
It
cool.
is really
I'm
neat.
happy that we're helping people have a better life.
Awesome. All right, what else you got?
That's my last one
Okay.
is the people. I still say it after all these years. We just have amazing people.
Yeah,
And I didn't know, 20 years ago what I was hoping for as far as people. I didn't have an image in my mind. But what I didn't realize that when we first met, I said there was those 12 people at Dos Gringos. And other church guys starting churches places would say, well, how much money do you have? 0. Oh, we got $100,000. How many church things do you have? None. How much experience do you have? None. Like all this stuff, right? Who do you got helping you? Nobody. And they'd tell me what they had, and we got all these people, 7 other people with church experience. They're going to do worship and children's ministry. And I'm like, okay. And I was a little jealous. Like, oh man, they got all this money, all this stuff. How do I do this, right? And God gifted us better than anyone else. The first group of people that came here were just nice, kind people. I didn't know it at the time, right? It took me a while to figure that out. Not that bright sometimes. But they were just really kind, good people. And what that did was attract other really good, kind people, all different backgrounds and lifestyles, all the different stuff. But at their core, just a good person that you'd like to sit down and have coffee with, right? Or watch a game or whatever it might be. And that's what grew this church. Because nice people attracted other nice people and repelled the crabbies. The crabby people have been repelled here for 20 years because it's hard to find other people to sit around and be crabby with. So they leave. And I didn't realize all that back then, but after 20 years, you can see it. And what we have now as a church is a group of authentic, kind people. And how I've always felt myself personally as kind of the grandfather of this place, whatever it is, when someone visits here, it's like I'm inviting them to my home and they're meeting my family.
Yeah.
And once you invite someone to your home and they meet your wife and your children, you're proud, right? Like, these are my boys, or this is my wife, she's Meg, and she's wonderful. And you're excited for them to meet. When you invite someone into your church, which is my family, I want them to have that same joy to meet you guys, the church family, and I still do. Like, I'm never nervous, like someone's going to come here and be treated poorly or not shown kindness. It doesn't matter what they look like or their background or whatever. They're going to be treated really, really, really well. So I'm just so proud of her. After all these years, my number one thing is I'm proud of the people that come to church here because they're just good, kind people trying to figure out faith, trying to figure out life, and just do their best. That's who we are, and I'm really excited about who we are.
That's something really, really special. I mean, you don't experience a welcoming atmosphere in very many places in life. And to be able to have how many hundreds of people, you walk in and you don't really care which one they bump into and talk to because you know that they're going to be kind, whether it's just a smile, a handshake, or a hello, or a full-on conversation for 3 hours. It could be any of those things. Right. But it's amazing that we have those people here. And here's what I love about all of your answers. Every last one of your answer was about people and relationships.
Okay.
Every last one of them was about that.
People are what matters.
Yeah, totally. It's so incredible. Every last answer, whether it was treating people well, communicating with people well, seeing their lives transformed, all those things were pretty awesome and spot on. So I think that's what I want to see continue here for forever. As many years as I have to continue to contribute to that, I want it to be about people knowing Jesus, and
that's the whole reason.
And it's the whole thing.
That's why it exists.
Man, I'm not going to ask any more questions. Is there anything else you want to say or anything like that?
I've said an awful lot. So I think I'm good.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. It's been a pleasure for this little one more thing, and I haven't told you this yet, but I'd love it if you'd still come back like once or twice and hop on the podcast. Okay. All right, cool. Yeah. Maybe not every week because we don't have don't have to drive all that far, but like a couple times a year.
Fun. I'll do it.
Visit like Grandpa or whatever it is. Maybe we'll call you Uncle.
I used to be you, Sam.
Uncle Mike. How's Uncle rather than Grandpa? Is that better?
Years ago I was you, man. So now I'm the old dude.
Oh gosh. Well, it means I don't have long until I'm the old dude. It's just gonna keep happening.
Enjoy the ride.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.